Today's project is this cute, simplistic Christmas card with a season's greeting sentiment and a bunch of mistletoe. The berries are glossy. You can see they've been finished off with glossy accents, and the whole effect has been created on a background on a Gelli press with a brayer. So we've got an interesting technique here of lines and a gradient colour that fades across the card. If you're interested to see how this was done, please stay tuned. For today's card, we're going to use this cute Joy to the World stamp set from Chloe's Creative Cards. I got this recently, free with a magazine, and it's got some really cute stamps on it. Today, I'm going to use the Season's Greeting, which is quite cute, and this mistletoe bunch. I'm going to create quite a simple card, just using those two stamps and a bit of brayering on a Gelli press to create an interesting but pale background. So I should put that away. And the first thing I'm going to do is create the background. So I've got here a piece of watercolor card. This is basic watercolor 300 GSM, I think it is. I get it from Cass Arts. It comes in a book form, but it's got a really nice texture to it and it takes water really well. So I've got my Gelli pad. This is one I bought, I think, from Lavinia. And it's a good one. I quite like it because all of the little indentations and everything on it gives for some really interesting effects, all these little sort of bobbles, etc. So you don't get a smooth background, which I quite like. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to pick up my glass mat and just pop that down on my glass mat. You'll find it kind of sticks to itself. I've got here some Ranger Distress Oxide in a bundle stage. And I've got my brayer, and I'm going to basically use my brayer. What I want to do, I want to create a blend up the page on the card. So I shall put the card on like that. So I'm going to work like that because I'm right-handed. So I'm going to put the majority of the ink on this side of the Gelli mat, and then I'm going to pull it up. So I'm going to ink up my brayer. This is a Distress Oxide ink, so it's quite wet. I'm going to start off the pad and then work my way up. By doing that, in theory, most of the ink will be at the bottom edge. But I want to get some ink all the way because I want to see the effect. So just working that, just putting a little bit more on the bottom there, just to make sure. Looks like I've got a little mark there, but hey, that should be fine. Okay. Straight on with the card. I'll lay that down and then just give it a good press all over, paying particular attention at the bottom where we want to get the majority of the ink. Lightening the pressure as I go. We want colour on the whole piece of card, but we want the majority of the colour on just that one edge. So just give that a second and then carefully peel it away. We should have ourselves, hopefully, an interesting effect. There we go. So we've got some lines down this side. I might actually just do that again because I want a bit more colour on that. I want it quite sort of dark on this edge. And that's the good thing about this, you can go over it repeatedly. You're not limited to one go. Making sure I'm putting that down the same way again. What I'm actually doing is I'm holding the card because I don't want any darker on the top. I just want that bottom bit a bit darker. There we go. Now look at that. So I've got some quite nice, interesting lines. I've got a couple of splats. It's looking quite interesting. I'm going to do one more. There we go. I quite like these lines down this side because what we're doing is quite free format. They give it a bit of texture, a bit of gradient. So I'm liking that. That'll do nicely. I'm just going to wipe that off with my damp cloth and also my glass mat. I do like the Gelli mat. You can get some really nice, interesting textures with it, which I find really good. I tend to create my own backgrounds these days more than using printed cardstock, although I do have a mountain of printed cardstock that I need to use at some point. Right, let's just pop that away. There we go. This is a Gelli Arts 6-inch, well, 6x6, but obviously you can get them in all sorts of different sizes. Okay, right, so that's our base. And I'm just going to give that a little dry with my heat gun, just to make sure, I'm dropping stuff, that that is perfectly dry. Apologies for the noise. Quite a nice ink blend there. The lines down the left-hand side. Because we're going to stamp on this, so we need to make sure it's perfectly dry. Dry the front and dry the back. There we go, that'll do. That should do. Right, let's put this away. I've had a bit of a disaster on my cutting mat, as you can probably see. I was gluing some stuff earlier with super glue, and it all fell all over my mat, so I'm going to need to buy a new one. The best place to get those from, I found, is the Works, where they are about 1/3 of the price of the Hobbycraft. Okay, so that's our card base. Hopefully, I know it's a little bit bright, but you can see that variation in colour, which looks quite nice. Okay, so I'm now going to use my stamping platform. This is a Tim Holtz one, but obviously there are lots of different models you can buy. I think they all do much the same job. I like this one. It's the one I've got. It's the only one I've got. So therefore it's the one I shall use. Right, I'm putting that in there, and then I'm just going to use a little anti-static mat, just the area I'm going to stamp, just to make sure there's no wetness or stickiness on there. So I'm going to arrange my stamps. I'm using this side of the image to just be blank basically, and just have the lines. And then what I want to do is the bunch of mistletoe popping in from the top. So it's just going to pretty much be that. I'm going to colour this, going to do it with watercolours and a white Gelli pen to get some nice green leaves and the white mistletoe. And then this I'm going to stamp in green. So it's pretty much that. Just checking that that's level. I think it is. Might just come over that way a little bit, I think. There we go. But intentionally leaving the left-hand side of the card empty. So we're working with negative space. Right, I'm going to stamp this in VersaFine Olympia green. I want the image stamped in green, and I also want the text. So I'm just inking up the stamps, and I'm going to go straight in and just stamp that. Give it a good press, let it soak in for a minute or two. And just check it. What's it look like? Yeah, that looks good. I'm going to straight away put that into some clear emboss. So I've got my tub here with my clear emboss powder, because I want to colour it. So I want it nicely set, and I want some nice clean and defined edges. I'm just dipping that into my powder, and then I'm going to heat that straight away. Just warming my gun up a little bit. And this is where the magic happens. Hopefully you can see that as I'm heating it. It's going nice and glossy green, which is good because that's what mistletoe looks like. And then I'm just heating the centre as well. It just makes it really pop if you emboss it. Just heat the back as well, just to make sure you haven't missed any areas. There we go. pretty good. And you can see why I wanted the darkness on the left-hand side, leaving it whiter on the right, so that we've then got the contrast when I paint the leaves of the dark green, sort of kind of matching the green on the other side of the page. You have to think about layout. It's important before you start stamping stuff and adding items to your project. You need to think about the layout really. So, and obviously the rule of thirds as well. We've got, you know, action in the top third, we've got a third middle and a third bottom. Cool, so that's good. All right, I'm just gonna pop that on one side just while I give my stamp a clean. It's a nice little stamp set this is. I think I should get a fair bit of use from this. Okay, let me pop that back on the actual stamp set if I can find it. Here we go. I like this car as well. There's a car laden up with presents. That's going to be really lovely to colour. Imagine those all in bright colours. There's a stocking with bauble, snowman, Christmas pudding. There's a lot of really nice stamps here, and it's a preset with a magazine, so that's pretty good. So check out your local Tesco's if you want to grab that while it's still on the store shelves. Okay. Right, we can put our stamping platform away. We've used that, okay. And here is our card base, which is starting to look quite nice. Right, I'm going to use my Arteza watercolour pens for this. I've got I think it's 64 set, which I'm using. And I'm going to be using this colour, which is the crocodile green, which I think is quite a good colour for mistletoe. So I'm gonna, but instead of applying this directly onto here, I'm gonna apply it onto a glass block, and then I'm just gonna use the water pen to lift the color up. So put some ink down, and then using your water pen, don't dilute it, literally just lift it up on your brush and then paint directly. So I'm just gonna paint inside the leaves. We're not really worried too much about depth and detail here. Just giving it a layer of colour. Inside the lines. What we'll do is we'll paint it, and then as that dries, we move on to the next area. We'll go back over the original just to get it a little bit darker. This is the water brush that actually came with the Arteza pens, which I've had probably a couple of years. I'm still actually using the free one that came with it. I have got a set of 3 water brushes, which are probably better than this one, but I actually quite still like using this one, so I've carried on with it. Okay, just keep going over till you get the kind of depth of colour that you're looking for. What we're looking for here is some nice contrast between this and the background. Obviously it's pale. It's quite nice we've got this blurred effect behind it because it kind of draws your eye to it. And I think that actually creates quite a nice effect. So just give it some green. Once that dries, that will look, I think, quite nice. Make sure you get all the leaves of the mistletoe. Just keep going over and over. I think we've got everything. And I find if you do this, if you put the watercolor pen onto an acrylic block, it's just way easier to control. If you put it onto the project and then pull the color away from it, on larger areas that's okay, but on a small thing like this, it's actually easier to do it that way around. Right, I'm just going to clean my brush. I have somehow knocked my kitchen roll onto the floor, which is really clever. So let me just give that a clean, literally just squeeze the brush, some clean water out, and just clean it. There we go. That's done. Okay. So that's my water brush and my colour. Again, I'm just going to give that a little dry, just to make sure that that's perfectly dry. Okay, just clean my acrylic block while I remember. There we go, that's done. I really have made a mess of my cutting mat, which I definitely need to replace. So what we're going to do now, I've got here a basic Gelli roll, Sakura White Pen. And what I'm going to do is just go in on all the tiny little mistletoe berries, because although they're light against the leaves, they're not white, and they should be white. What we're going to do, we're going to colour them white, and then we're also going to use glossy accents on them, just a little tiny drop on each, just to give it a kind of glossy effect, which will lift it up from the background. So this is going to be quite precise, and I hope you can see it. I'm just dotting basically, because I don't want to have to go in afterwards and redo the sort of little dots on the berries. So all I'm doing is just dotting around them, working around the little marks. If you cover one up, it doesn't really matter too much. Obviously try, if you can, to work around without doing that. This just lightens it up, and it will make those whiter than they are. Keep an eye on your pen as well. I do find that these block up when you're using them on other mediums. So test it if you're not sure it's still working. Just on a piece of scrap paper. So I've got a piece of scrap here. You can sometimes see when you do that, nothing comes out whatsoever. Just clean the nib. I find rolling it sometimes in your hand also helps. There we go. Now we're getting the white again. You can just see that. So, just going over again. There we go. And again, I'm just going to come in and just dry that. It's usually best when drying if you lift it. It lets the heat dissipate underneath, and it just helps dry things a little bit quicker. That's got a really nice high shine on that because of the heat embossing. There we go, you can see that. Looks nice. Okay, what we're going to do now, so we're just going to use, I've got the matching Distress ink colour in Bundle Sage, but this is a Distress ink rather than a Distress Oxide. These are very juicy, very wet. These are not so wet. And what I'm going to do is just go around the edge of the card. So because this is very light, I just want to tie the whole thing together. How I would normally do this is just get a piece of scrap paper, whatever, so you don't risk putting any fingerprints onto your project. Start off the page and just in circular motion work your way down each side. I normally do this over to the very right of my cutting mat, just to make sure I don't get any marks on anything in the center of the page, but just for the purposes of this, so you can see what I'm doing it in the middle. Obviously, the more times you go over it, the darker it gets. You don't want it too dark. This side almost doesn't need anything, but I'm just going to do it anyway, just for completeness. And always think about the direction of travel. You always want to be working out towards the outer of the card. Okay, once you've been all the way around, I then always ink up my pad and literally just run it along the edges of the card, just to get rid of any white edges for when we mount it on our layer. Okay, there we go, that's done. What I'm going to do before I do anything else is just clean this area, because I've been inking and I don't want anything to go onto anything that it shouldn't. Right, so we've got our sort of central image there. We've got just quite a nice faded effect, light on this side. We've got our mistletoe hanging down, our season's greeting sentiment, slight green around the edging, which is quite nice. What I'm going to do to tie that all together is I've got a scrap piece of metallic green card here in a kind of, not emerald, it's darker than emerald, but like a sort of a quite a nice mid-green, I guess, really. What I'm going to do, actually I'm just going to dry my cutting mat before I do that. Wet marks on that. So I'm going to take my ruler and our image, and this paper has been bouncing around in a drawer for a long while, so it's actually quite messy, so I'm probably going to stick it down here and cut all the edges. To fasten that down, I'm going to use double-sided tape, just pulling along each of the edges into the corners just to hold that in place. And then just a piece in the middle. Use my tweezers to lift those. Put those scraps into my paper recycling, and then we need to just stick this down. So I'm not, as I said, I've not got a nice clean edge anywhere, so I'm actually just going to plonk it down somewhere and then cut it. So I'm guessing, using my own eye, I'm just going to turn it over, give that a good press down. Look at that, I saw that, but thankfully it was not in a place that mattered. Okay, so we need to cut 3 sides of this, so I'm just going to do this just by eye, basically. might just pop a little piece of glue under there. I can actually see there's a gap there, which I don't like. And last side. There we go. Now I've just got my little tube of glue here. I can see that I've got a slightly lifted piece here, so I'm literally just going to pop a tiny bit of glue in there if it wasn't dried up and stuck. Use a piece of kitchen towel. Mop up any glue that comes out, but it's clear drying anyway, so that won't matter. Okay, pop that away. I can get the pin back in the end. Okay, and I've got here a basic white 6-inch card blank, which I'm just going to fold and score. Using my bone folder. And that will look nice on a plain white background. So again, double-sided tape. I've just probably got about enough on this roll before I need to grab a new one. Something you must never run out of when you're a card mate. In fact, look at that. I have run out, which is really great. Okay, hang on one sec. I'm just gonna have to go and grab a new roll. This is a very basic one that I buy from Amazon. I think it's 3 rolls for about £5, so it's not an expensive brand. I find that it really doesn't matter the quality of this double-sided tape. Cheap version works as well as expensive. Okay, now I'm going to do the bunny ears trick here, where you peel just an edge back, apart from this centre one, which I will peel fully back, so that we can actually position this easily. So, just peeling those edges down, and then let's pop that down in place. So, check the orientation of the card. Just if we've got any dirty marks or anything we need to cover up. We haven't, which is good. And then pop those back and pop that down. Now leave it high, and then that gives you the wiggle room that you need to just eyeball it and get it into the right place. Looks pretty good to me. And then I always go around with my bone folder. Just make sure that that is properly down. It's not exactly perfect there. There's a slightly smaller gap there than there is there, but it's a handmade card. It's looking pretty good. Okay, and then last finishing touch we're going to do is just a little bit of glossy accents on the berries. So always check this before you start. It's just in case it's not going to come out well. I seem to have lost my scrap piece of paper. There we go, there's another piece here. So just check how this comes out before you start. I often find this is gunked up and I need to free it with the pin, which is exactly what's happened here again. Okay, so just let's try that again. There we go. So all we want to do is dab where the berries are. Which will just give them all a slightly glossy finish once it's dry. It looks cloudy right now, but it'll dry clear, leaving us with shiny berries. There we go, that's it. So, we've got our card for today. So, the season's greetings and the mistletoe is stamped in green, heat embossed with clear powder just to give it that glossy effect. And then obviously the background we created using the brayer, we've got some lines down here. Instead of ribbon or something that I would have probably put down this side just to balance it out, we're just using those natural lines and the gradient fade with a nice green border. And that's our project for today, which I think looks quite nice. If you've enjoyed watching my video and you want to see others, there are more on my YouTube channel. Also, I sell my cards on Etsy. I'm on Instagram and also TikTok. Crafts by John UK is the handle, and it's the same across all the platforms. So please, if you've enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up and a like, and maybe subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.